You can let them in.
Okay. Hi, guys. Everybody's getting connected. We'll get started here in just a second.
Okay. How are y'all doing? Good.
Okay, I'm gonna make sure that everybody on the list that's here got the email this morning, and I know one person didn't, so I'm gonna send that out. And Pam, I'm gonna let you get started.
Wonderful. Well, hello, everybody. Good to see you today. Hope you all had a nice holiday weekend. I wanted you to know that I am not in my normal workspace. Both my parents have COVID. And one is 85 and one is 94. So I came down to help my sister with their care. And so I'm in their house right now. And, you may see people walking behind me with masks or whatever, but that's, don't be alarmed. We, at least for the moment, have things under control. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. This is our last session. And we had talked about adding one for evaluation, but with this whole week was just a nightmare for me. So I didn't pull all that together. So we're going to offer that at the next time. And we'll be sure to let you know when that is. And that one's a fairly advanced class on evaluation. She calls it a basic class, but it's, she's a very stringent evaluator. So it tends to be a little more than basic. Wanted to first start out by seeing, does anybody have any questions from either last week's presentation or even any prior ones before we get rolling today? And the only thing I don't know how to do is monitor the chat box. So I don't know, have you already left yet, Megan?
Oh, no, I will be on until 1 o'clock and then.
Oh, you know what? I thought you meant my 1 o'clock because I'm Eastern.
Oh,
so good.
Yes,
oh, we're fine then. We're fine.
Okay, yeah, okay. And I'll monitor all that. Don't worry, I can do that and
Excellent.
Be at the same time.
Okay, so this is, and just interrupt me if you have questions or, figure out a wave or something. What I'd like to do is have you're going to need to strap your seatbelts on here because we're going to go through some pretty in-depth content, and I'll show you all, kind of the, at least the way I do it, which again, may not be how you want to do it. I do remind folks that I've brought in about $100 million doing it this way on a very part-time basis. So it is a successful strategy. So feel free to use it, don't use it, do a hybrid. So what I did here is this 10-page handout, which you should already have. You can keep, and that will give you some additional information. But I'm going to walk you through. This time I pulled this format from Circles of Care. I think last time we did Native Connections, but this is the Circles of Care. And so it starts out with Section A, Population of Focus and Statement of Need. Now, a couple things here. One, I went ahead and I capitalized this Section A, Population of Focus and Statement of Need. I do that because I run all my sections together. I don't start a new page fresh with each section. I don't have the luxury of enough real estate in the grant narrative to start fresh. If it happens to work out that way, great. But that way I want the reader, since I'm kind of famous for putting a lot of content in a small space, to be able to distinguish when it's time to segue to the next section. So I always capitalize I call these the headers right here. And then I call these little prompts the subheaders or prompts, okay? Now, in case you missed the first session, this is a 10-page application. So I take a practical approach. This is worth 15 points. What I will do is I will literally, when I'm done answering and I'm about ready to send it, I delete that because that takes up a whole line that you don't need. So when you do that times 5 or so sections, you've got an extra paragraph worth of space that you can use for narratives. So I take that off. But let's say I hadn't done that. What this does is SAMHSA tells you that it's worth 15 points, approximately 2 pages. What I do is I divide the points into the total points. So this is a 10-page application. It's worth 100 points. I make mine more like 1.5 pages. But this is all guidelines. If I do go over a little bit, that's okay. This is an example where these are guidelines, not mandates. Keep in mind, for non-SAMHSA grants, some of the funders will limit you exactly and precisely to a page limit on a certain section. They may say no more than 1 page or no more than 5. So just look at the wording to see how much flexibility you have. So I want to show you that after that header, and I gave you a little disclosure here. I have mixed and matched examples from real grants that I have written and had funded. And so they're not all from the same application. So they may not make sense as a whole. If you were to read section A through the end, you would see, different topics. And I'm telling you that on purpose. I'm just trying to give you a different flavor for different kinds of grants. So the first prompt is identify your population or populations, either way, of focus and the geographic catchment area where services will be delivered. That's a number 1. I'm the one, again, that bolded and I also italicized the prompt. And I do that to let the reviewer know they do want you at least to keep these numbers, 1, 2, 3, whatever the little numbers are in there. But I do it to help the grant reviewer keep on track with their review. But this is too much space, this whole thing. So I abbreviate it when I'm done to PAPA focus and geographic catchment area. And then I literally start my typing right here. So I don't even, I don't skip to the next line, but I bold it so that it distinguishes it from the other non-bolded text, which is my response. Now, I'm kind of funny about this section that SAMHSA does. I don't like to do it in the order of population of focus and geographic area, because I feel like it's better to have the reader understand where the heck you are in the world first, and what is that geographic area like? Because in that geographic catchment area discussion, you will talk about the entire population of your tribe, but then there'll be a subpopulation when you drill down to your population of focus. So to me, the sequence makes more sense to go from big down to little. And again, as long as that sequence stays true to section A, in other words, I'm not going to start doing prompts from section B and C and work them in to section A. I'm staying within section A. I'm just reverse ordering these 2 little items here. And sometimes I'll tell the reviewer that. I'll say, note to the reviewer, I reverse the sequence for clarity or something. I'll just say that. So anyway, so here, this is a grant that I wrote, probably, I'm going to say 10 years ago, maybe not. Yeah, probably about 10 years ago. And this was for the Navajo Nation. And they had a very just absolutely tragic cluster suicide. 15 young Navajo teens, I believe, killed themselves. And so in a cluster suicide. And so this particular photo was taken of a, where their graves were, and then how they were memorialized. And I always ask permission before I share a photo. I got this from the folks I work with at Navajo. And we decided that we wanted to make a gut-wrenching, like, you need to fund us now because of the gravity of this. And so we included this photo. And you'll see here that we talk about, the Navajos who took their lives, and that, that their lives must not be in vain, and that this grant request is in their honor. And I do that sometimes. I will even do what's called a preface. Now, the preface, you have to count it towards your page limit. It's not like you can do an introduction or a preface and get extra space. So I would literally, if this were, let me back up a little bit. If this were the here where it says section A, if this is my very first page of my 10 pages, I might do something like this, preface, and then I start typing something. Or I may say dedication and then start typing something. But again, it counts towards your page limits, and it's just something I'll do, just a couple of sentences, because I really like to keep these are very emotional issues. And I think if you write too much in a sterile way and you're all data and statistics, it loses the notion that these are real people that are affected. So I go for the juggler, I do. And I get, like I said, I have probably a 90% success rate. I think I have the highest success rate in the country for SAMHSA grants. Now I haven't done as many lately, so that may have changed, but this is something I do. Now you can't be sappy, and you can't overdo it, and it has to be legitimate. And these are the things that you can start gathering now, even before a grant application hits the street. And so we're saying, we want this grant request is in their honor, and we want them, the youth, young adults, and families to have a better future than their past. And so, we're kind of setting the stage here. So you'll see that here are what I would need to add. Let me see, because these are all, I've made a point to let you know that these are partial grant examples. So there would obviously be a lot more than this, but somewhere in here, I would probably say something. Oh, here, I've already done it. Okay, so that this is in Thoreau, and it's a census designated place in McKinley County, New Mexico. And then because I've reversed the order, but even if I don't reverse the order, anytime I respond to the exact criteria, I make sure I either underline it, bold it, or italicize it. So I've let the reviewer know very clearly our geographic catchment area of focus. There's no chance that a reviewer is going to think I missed that, because that's a critical thing you have to include according to the criteria. So I might go on in a lot more detail. I gave you a partial example. I might say, there are, and I'm making up these numbers, 20,000 members of the tribe in this area. They range in age from so-and-so to so-and-so. It's a 20 square mile area. It's very remote. It has limited internet access. So when you describe your geographic area of focus, you're not just describing, and this is what, and I'm not kidding, 50% of the grant applications I've reviewed, they literally, when and answer that question, they just say the name of the town and the state, or the name of the tribe and the region. They want more than that. These reviewers may know nothing about this area, and they may not know how remote it is. And so it's up to you to make sure you don't just say the name of the county and the tribe or the state, but to give the reviewer, because they're coming from a different perch. They might be in DC, they might be somewhere else. They may not have a clue what this is like. Also, like in writing for I did one for Alaska, and it was important to note that, and I also wrote one for Montana, and in both of those, I made sure that the reader knew that the geographic catchment area is inaccessible during bad snowstorms. So there are folks that are not able to get the clinical services they need, or the medication that they need. If in some cases in Alaska, they were having to take a plane every single day when they were on a daily medication for opioid use disorder to be observed, which I don't agree with that. That's not my thing, but that's what they did. So that's a huge, huge hardship. So again, it's up to you as the grant writer to make this painfully clear. Don't assume they know, and make sure that you've really connected. So by the time this reviewer reads this, they ought to have a lump in their throat. Also, they should know, oh my gosh, these people are going to have incredible needs, maybe beyond what the grant asks for, but you've made that business case by just weaving these details in very cleverly. I know that you know, in Native American history and currently, storytelling is a very important facet. And this is your chance to tell your story and just don't make it boring. Okay, so now we're going to assume you've done a really nice, and I'll show you one more example, description of your geographic area. Again, I bolded and italicized our intended population of focus. Again, what people do here is they'll say youth. Okay, well, really, well, youth of what age? Certain youth, all youth in the county, or Navajo Nation high school students, or, you know, and how many of them? So I've said 100, and I've underlined it, 100 Navajo Nation high school students per year between 15 and 18 years of age. This is the level of detail expected. So don't just, you know, be vague. And then I even said the anticipated gender breakdown is 65% female, 35% male, based on current school attendance data. That's not atypical to have more female than males because often the boys drop out of school sooner. So if you're dealing with a high school population, in many tribal communities, you'll have more females finish than males. You might even want to explain that here briefly, you know, but these data are real. These came from the Navajo Nation was very advanced in their surveys. So these data came from the Navajo Survey of Youth. And we were making the case here that that in comparison to their US peers, Navajo students are 28.5% more likely to have tried marijuana before age 13, 26.1% more likely to have smoked marijuana at school, 43.6% more likely to have ever tried marijuana, and 39% more likely to have used marijuana in the past 30 days. Remember that past 30-day use is what we call a proxy measure for regular use. That is to be distinguished with lifetime use, which is you might have tried something once and never done it again, but past 30 days. So in this one little bullet here, I've really provided a jam-packed amount of data that shows I know my population of focus. Now, you may not have a fancy survey, and I'm going to tell you a way to address that in a minute. This is startling. These same Navajo Nation youth were 91% more likely to have attempted suicide in the past year. And then they, 29.7% more likely to make a suicide plan, and 15.2% more likely to have seriously considered suicide in the past year. And we get into birth control, sexual intercourse. You see all these different examples here. Then we always try to put resiliency opportunities in here to reinforce the resilient nature of this tribal nation and others, and to talk about how the percentage of students that have participated in traditional ceremony, fire dances, blessings, and so forth, and to know their mother's clan and ancestry. And these are more kind of strength-based opportunities, because you want to give a full picture of your population of focus. Remember, we don't call them target populations. We try to avoid the word target. So this population of focus, this is 2011 data. So that was the year that I wrote this. So this is 9 years old now. But I showed it just so you can see how rich these data are for such a, I haven't even used a page of text well, yeah, I guess I have. If you take all these things off the top that were notes to y'all, I probably did have about a page of text. And so that's a lot. And I can assure you that based on the grants I reviewed, that's a lot more data than I'm used to seeing. Now, let's say you don't have access to this nifty survey that the Navajo Nation had. You can try to do what we call a key informant survey. We talked about that in module 1. All this could be is where you ask permission. Let's say, and I'm making this up, let's say you were going to serve youth. You maybe ask the school, can we come in and have a focus group with your students for 30 minutes one day? Or maybe you put word out on social media that you're going to meet kids in the park on a certain day, and you're going to offer snacks or incentives. Or maybe if you don't have money for incentives, you do a drawing So you say, everyone that comes, we're going to give you a ticket. You're going to drop your ticket in a fishbowl. And at the end of the 30 minutes or hour that we spend with you, we're going to draw 3 names. So even if you don't have a way to reward everybody, they have a chance to be rewarded. We know through research that the incentives do work, and significantly so. So you may call the students together on your own, or youth from your tribal community on their own some Saturday afternoon at a park. Maybe you feed them, you have pizza, you do a drawing, and you literally have a handful of structured questions that you pass out. You make them anonymous. They fill out your little survey and they turn it back into you with no names on it. And you count them up and you create these percentages. Now, you won't have a statistical sample, and that's okay as long as you don't misrepresent it. So what you can say is, based on a key informant survey we conducted on, and tell them the date or the month, so November of 2020, the youth surveyed responded, the data below reflect the drug use or the depression or the suicide risk or whatever it is you're assessing, depending on what grant you're going for, pregnancy risk, whatever your topic is, that's what your questions would involve. And you would just say, based on that, these are the percentages. Now, I shared with you in module 2 that I will never tell a lie ever in a grant, but I will, let's see, how do I put this delicately? I will use creative phrasing, or I will maybe not share my full deck of cards. So for example, if I had a really good sample size, let's say 50 youth, I would say I surveyed 50 youth. If only 20 kids showed up, I would just say, in a survey on this date of youth between the ages. In other words, I would throw in other other data elements. I just might leave out that it only involved 15 kids. Okay. Again, if someone asks me, I would never lie about it. I just may not offer that. So, and then if you have a concern about that, you can put a little note that says, please note that upon grant award, we may attempt to get a more scientific survey initiated, especially if you have money in the grant to do that. So, it is what it is. We know that there's a big distrust of data in Native communities. That's for a very good reason, based on all the broken treaties and all the, the long history, complicated history that Native Americans have been subjected to by the Caucasians and others. And so basically, there's not a lot of data in a lot of tribal communities, but you really do need to make every effort, especially if you have funding and an opportunity to begin collecting your own data. You don't have to share it, but you should know what your data says and how to respond. And if you want to get more grant points, maybe you do share it in a grant like this. So I showed you last week how to create a bar graph in about a minute. This is how I created this one. Do know that when I submitted this grant, and we did get funding on this, you were allowed to do colorful graphs. Now they want them in black and white. They won't throw it out if you turn it in color, but there is a way, and I don't know if I can do it here, to right click and you change somehow the color of the, and you just make it all black and white. And you may have to Google how to do that, but, and if we have time at the end, I'll try it. Or if Christian is on, he's a whiz, he can tell me how to do that. So anyway, I show the bar graph. I'm showing how many high school students in the past 12 months had depression, were sad and hopeless, seriously considered suicide, made a plan, and so forth. So by the time the reader gets down to this example, I guarantee you they're wanting to fund this, no matter what else. Unless I totally botched section B, C, and D. And we got really good points on this. Most of my grants are in the high 90s. And you really need to be, depending on how many grant awards for SAMHSA, you really need to be at least in the high 80s typically, unless they fund a lot. Again, it depends on the number that they fund. So here's another example. So this was for Pine Ridge. This was the Oglala Sioux tribe. This is a more recent grant. I want to show you that I showed the reader where the geographic area was and I went online and I just copy and pasted this. I literally just Googled this, right-clicked it, copied it, pasted it in, brought it down to scale. And to just, because I want them to see it's on the border, I want to see how big it is geographically. And I think readers like to see a little chart, a graph, a map, something. So here, and again, you'll see that my language is very intentional. This is not boring statistical data. Excuse me, just spilled water on myself. Rolling pine-covered hills and ridges provided the inspiration for the name Pine Ridge, tribal headquarters for and home to the Oglala Sioux tribe. Oglala, or Scatter Their Own, are one of the 7 bands of the Lakota division of the Great Sioux Nation. While the population of the reservation is constantly in flux, the total OST enrollment is 38,332, with 19,639 living on the reservation. Then I put my source. By the way, I put the sources throughout because that's one of the requirements, and I tend to do it right after I make the statement. I got all of that off their website. I didn't make any, I mean, I might have, wordsmithed it, but that came straight from the website. And a lot of these kinds of things you can get straight from your own websites. But I wanted them to know that, that Oglala County is labeled the poorest county in the nation, literally in the nation. So that, again, I'm going in for full points here. Like I'm going in for, we need these funds. The per capita income of our residents is $8,768. And, if I just said poor, people might not know how to, that's a relative term. So I provide the source and I provide more specifics. Fueled by poverty and addiction, the unemployment rate hovers around 70%. And the most current data I had for that was 2017. And I go on and describe some more things and how there's a rise in methamphetamine use, a rise in murders, that we went from a pill problem to heroin, to shake and bake meth, back to heroin, then to fentanyl, back to meth. So we're, this is the reality. These were all from key informant testimony. Folks told me this that I interviewed when I helped them with the grant. But these were just things that give you a flavor for what to expect on this reservation. I talk a little bit about, depending on resources, access to food, transportation, and utilities, a single house may domicile more than a dozen individuals. And at the time I wrote this, some were living in cars with their children. This was in the winter, and they were even living there in the winter months. So again, you don't hold back. You tell them, this is what it is. This is real. This is what we're up against. And you do this for a number of reasons. One is to get the grant. Again, only if it's true. You have to provide accurate information. But also, let's be real. If this is the environment you're implementing your grant in once you get a grant award, things may not go swimmingly. Things may take a while to get off the ground. There may be lots of challenges getting, the program implemented. And so to me, this is kind of an FYI that, like, if I ever got in trouble with the feds or a project officer, I would say, like, look, we didn't hide how difficult this situation is. We need, we didn't get this way overnight, and we need time. And you can't just do a drive-by grant for a couple of years and think, problem solved. This is going to be, and this is why the feds need to really be investing for the long term in tribal communities. And you see that happening now, which is fantastic. And we do need the grants to be a longer time frame, however, because by these 2 and 3 year grants, by the time you get them up and running, it's time to bring them back, and it's hard to get them sustained. So the life expectancy is 66.8 years. That's incredibly low. It's really let them know this is a very young population in this tribe. 42.4% are under 20 years of age. And that's a significant difference. In South Dakota in general, it's 27.8% is under 20. So that lets you know this is a very young population. Now, later I'll make the case that because so many of the elders are dying at such a young age, that a lot of these kids don't have parents, don't have grandparents, don't have role models, don't have the kind of guidance. So I might write that into the grant that I might want money for mentors or peers. So because what you're going to see is that you have to tie what you ask money for in your programming should tie directly back to the needs that you've outlined. So it's not just a freestanding section on need, and then you write a freestanding section somewhere else. All of these should be woven together and they should tell a story. So I talk about the toxic mix of poverty, unemployment, and poor health has contributed to suicide risk. I described what that is. You might have heard the word YAYA, youth, young adults. So I, instead of having to write out youth and young adults and take up that many words, because again, your every word counts here. You know, I put Y/YA, youth, young adults. Anyway, I told you last week that I always write my grant to the people that are reviewing it because they're the ones that are going to give me the points or not. So I speak to them and I put here reviewer note. 2 days before we finished this narrative, we had an 8-year-old seeking treatment. So I had written this entire grant. It was going to be for 12 and up. And so all my data was 12 and up. Everything was 12 and up. We got within 2 days of submission and we had an 8-year-old needing treatment. So it was too late. It has a cascade effect. If you change the date of the age range one place, there's a cascading effect throughout the grant where you have to adjust it potentially in other places. I didn't have time, so I did a reviewer note, and plus I wanted this for emphasis, that we now have an unrestricted lower age range. I mean, as appalling as it is to think you have to do that, that's what we did. And again, I know that these are also points. And by the way, we did get this grant also. So now we're going to get a little more complicated. So I think we have, and let me know if anyone has any questions on population of focus, geographic catchment area before we go to the next. And these are, again, just partial examples, but I really wanted you to get a sense of the tone and the level of detail. Any questions in the chat, Megan? I'm going to take that as a no.
Good. Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling. I hope your seatbelts are still firmly attached because now it gets a little more complicated. So the next question, and you know, I mean, these questions are to me fairly complex. I don't like these questions, but it is what it is. Here's our casual carefree question number 2. Or prompt number 2, document the need for an enhanced infrastructure to increase the capacity to implement, sustain, and improve effective substance abuse prevention and/or mental health services in the proposed catchment area. That's a lot of things that they're asking for in a very confusing way. And that's not all for this prompt. Describe the service gaps and other problems related to the need for infrastructure development. Identify the source of the data. Now, what I do, I will never leave this amount right here on a grant because look at all the lines just to get the prompt in. So I will again reduce. So I put need for enhanced infrastructure, service gaps, so I'll abbreviate these things. I'm going to show you another way to do this just to make sure, because what happens, and I promise you over half of the grant applications that will come in somebody will read this whole thing and say, oh, they want to know about gaps. No, they want to know about documenting, proving your need for an enhanced infrastructure. Infrastructure in this case is they don't really want you to do so much of the clinical services. They want you to do, think about building a house, okay, and the house is built on a foundation. You know, you've got rebar and you've got concrete and you've got all of the infrastructure that supports the home. Okay, so infrastructure in this case, and they don't even give you an example of what it means or what they mean by it, which is why I'm covering this now. So in other words, you don't just run out and implement therapeutic treatment services in a community of any kind, tribal or otherwise. You have to say, okay, to provide those clinical services, first of all, I have to have a trained workforce, right? You don't just let any old person go out and provide service. So you have to have a trained workforce. And they have to sometimes meet certain certifications and licensure. So sometimes it's very specific training, so many hours in ethics, so many hours in whatever, You also have to have, when you implement the services, you have to have evidence-based or effective practices. You don't just make it up as you go along. So you might have to have some evidence-based practices or effective practices, including tribal, traditional, cultural practices. Again, the structure or the framework that you're going to lay this program on top of. You have to have, you want to know that is what you're doing effective. So that means you'll probably have to have some data collection, maybe some surveys, at least some satisfaction questionnaires to ask everyone that gets the service, did they get what they needed? Did it meet their needs? Were there things that they should have gotten? Also part of infrastructure is collaboration or collaborative practice. Very rarely will a tribe, or one facet of a tribe or any organization be able to implement something in a vacuum. So if you're going to implement, in this case, mental health services, then that also goes hand in hand with substance use. So you're going to have substance use, mental health. It also relates to healthcare because there's a huge overlap between depression and health, and especially injection drug use and vein health, and you get inflammation of the heart, and you have all kinds of health issues when you have depression and drug use. So these are all partners that you'll want to have. If you're going to implement, let's say with youth, you got to have schools on board to get, that's your best access point to youth, or after school programs or boys and girls clubs. So really all these, if you think about connecting all these dots and creating a really good foundation on which you then implement services. So that's what they mean. I'm sorry that was not explained to you by the funder, but that's what they mean by that. Now, and this is a very complexly worded question, and you don't have a lot of room. So so I'm going to give you an example of what I wrote here. So despite incremental improvements to both access and quality of health and behavioral health care for our OST members, the continued development of mental health infrastructure is essential in order to keep pace with growing demand. Each time a parent has a substance use disorder, suffers from mental illness, or becomes incarcerated or homeless, it's like a stone dropping into a river, sending countless ripples onward throughout the reservation, disrupting families, straining our health and social service departments, already weakened from excessive burdens. By the way, this was pre-COVID. This would be a lot more detailed with COVID had this gone in right now. Many of our children and youth carry their complex historical trauma, other trauma and emotional needs into the classroom. Then you can see all the rest of the detail that we have to, rely on limited resources. And here I describe all the little partners that are part of the infrastructure. Because I don't have a lot of room, I remind them that some of this is in an attachment, or, and I'll also discuss this in another section of the grant. And I'd let them know that the clinics that we need as part of this infrastructure are 2 hours away in Rapid City. Well, that's not an option. You can't, we don't always have transportation, and people are in crisis to go 2 hours away. And the farther away they are from their reservation, the less likely they are to have a Native workforce that really understands and has cultural competency to treat this particular population. So none of this is good. So I'm explaining, setting the stage, for why we're going to take them deep on the budget for replicating all these services from into our area, because we don't want to go 2 hours away and have non-Native staff dealing with the programs. The youth. So remember, I told you I never use bullets because it takes up too much room for the most part. This is an example of how I used symbols, so I don't lose any indentation white space. I do weave in strengths as often as I can. While we have many strengths on which we will continue to build, we have many challenges, gaps, and infrastructure needs. A few examples are, and then you can see how I describe all of these. limited resources stressed over many sites, large geography, recruitment and retention of professional staff, especially native licensed staff, limited workforce development and training opportunities, and so forth and so on. Bureaucracy, which threatens our agility and autonomy. So this is how I would then start to get into the gaps. So that would then wrap up section A. We're going to move on to section B unless anyone has any questions. I'm going to step away and just open the window. I'm in Florida now with my parents, and I had right when I had the windows opened without air conditioning, and somebody was mowing the lawn. So now that they're stopped and I'm starting to sweat, I'm going to step away for just a minute and get some fresh air here.
You guys are hanging in there very well. I know that.
Sorry. Okay.
Information.
Woo, what a difference that makes. I can already feel it. Okay.
Breathe again, Pam.
Either that or I'm getting really worked up over the content, or both, probably. Okay. So now, let's see, with the swiftness of a manatee, I will be moving into section B, proposed implementation approach. Now this has the most points. So this, and just please always remember the points, you put your strongest effort in where the most points are. Now, and so 35 points, they're saying is approximately 5 pages. This was because some of this was not a 10-page application, that some of this I'm mixing and matching back when grant applications were more like 30 pages or 25. So normally you would divide the points. This would be 3.5 pages if it's a 10-page application with 100 total point potential. Okay, this is now describe the goals and measurable objectives of the proposed project and align them with the statement of need described in A2. State the unduplicated number of individuals you propose to serve annually and over the entire grant or entire project period with grant funds. Let's do the easy part first. This is how simple it is to put unduplicated number. You can see year one. Always remember in your first year of a grant, you're going to serve less people. Why? Because you have startup, and startup generally takes 3 to 4 months. So you're not going to be serving people. So what I always tell people to do is figure out when you're fully staffed and ready to go, how many people can you serve in prevention or treatment, whatever the grant is, in a year's time? And then take about 75% of that for year and say that's how many you'll do in year one. So just to keep it easy, I said, we're going to do 75 in year one due to startup, 100 in year two, and 100 in year three. Now, if I were providing a long-term treatment program with a grant, I would do less in year three, because you're going to have to start you're not going to start admitting people to a long-term grant funded program that's going to expire. You might stop admitting people 6 months into the last year of your grant because the money won't be there to continue. Now that's a double-edged sword. A sharp grant reviewer will say, so you're already planning to serve less people in year three because your funds are going to run out. We're wanting you to sustain this grant. So if you're not going to sustain it with your own funding, then we don't want to fund you now. So, that's a tricky thing. So, it may be better to go ahead and put your full amount for your last year, but that's a judgment call you have to make. Or you can do an asterisk and say 100, assuming our sustainability plan is successful, or something like that. I mean, listen, 3 years, who can predict what's going to happen in 3 days, 3 weeks, 3 months versus 3 years, So you do the best you can. That's all you can do. Okay, now so that was the easy one. Let's go back to goals, objectives aligned with need. Where do I get my goals and objectives? I covered this briefly the other day. I get them from the grant itself, the grant application. There's no sense reinventing the wheel and making up your own goals when they're pretty much handed to you. Now you're going to you're going to edit them a little, but this is what I do. So I'm going to, okay, wait, now I have to change you to show. Hold on a minute. Let's see here. Let's go back to this. Okay, I'm going to stop share, and I'm going to now go back to my a new screen share, and I'm going to, okay, so can you now see my circles of care application, RFA?
It's short titles, circles of care is on the right. It says executive summary. On top.
Perfect. Yep, that's it. Okay. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to highlight as I go, if it will let me, to show you how I get my goals and objectives text. So they're saying that SAMHSA is accepting applications for planning and developing infrastructure to support Native communities. So I might say, the goal is, no, I'm gonna call this a purpose. The purpose is to plan and develop infrastructure to promote mental health for children, youth, and families in our tribal community, and you would name your tribe. So I might have this overarching purpose. And that would be so that they know, okay, this is for planning and developing infrastructure. Notice this is not about service delivery. This is about planning and getting ready by developing the infrastructure for service delivery. You are allowed, just so you know, to provide services in year 3 as a small pilot, but this particular grant is not about services. And so, and I may then provide, I might even merge a little of that language in, because it says the purpose. Let's see here. Or I just might make this my goal. Because see, their goal is to provide tools and resources to you. So you're not going to take that. Your job is to plan and design a holistic, evidence and community-based coordinated system of care to support mental health for children, youth, and families. So I'm going to take these 2 yellow highlights. I would run those together somehow and create a really nice statement of purpose. And I would put that first. And that's just kind of like an overarching purpose of the I would call it project purpose. Remember, this is purpose for SAMHSA of the funding. And then in turn, you get the funding and you then implement their dream here of what they want you to do. Here is the goal: to increase the capacity and effectiveness of mental health systems serving, and I would put in the name of your tribal community. So let's do that now. Let me see what I have the best way to do this. Let me go through, because since I have to share and unshare multiple times, I'm going to just start highlighting several things to show you. And another goal to reduce the gap between the need for mental health services and the availability of services. And I will change this to our population of focus. Now, this is very important. The program has strong emphasis on cross-system coordination, inclusion of the family, youth, and family. So these are all words that you will now see that I will use in my goals and objectives. This is kind of a repeat there. That's pretty much all I'm going to have to go from there. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to stop sharing this for a minute, and I'm going to have to open a new blank page. So I'm going to do a new share, and I'm going to open blank page here, or I'm going to go down to a blank page. Okay. So let me insert remove this page break. Okay. All right. Now, this is where we're going to now take, I'm going to go ahead and take this, all that's yellow. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to paste it here. I'm going to immediately put it in the required font size, which is Times New Roman 12. And I'm going to unyellow it, unhighlight it, no color. Okay, now, so I will say overarching purpose. No, I know I'm going to call it project purpose. Okay, project purpose. Our project will plan and develop infrastructure to promote mental health of children, youth, and families. And if you're only doing children, you would do children. Or if it's youth, you know, you'd make it, you would tailor this to what you intend to do. In our tribal community, or you can say the name of your tribe. Oops. Okay, now this, I'm going to work some of this language in. I'm going to save that for later because let's see, here we go. Now, that's my project purpose. I always put one, usually, or I don't always, usually, even though it's not asked for. Just because I want, the reason I do it, even though it's not required there, is I want them to know I understand the purpose of all this, you know, that I'm clear on what I'm supposed to do. Where does it say? Okay, how I know that this statement here is going to be a goal is because remember, goals are vision statements of the end result that you will get when everything is all finished. When your program is implemented and everything's good, what's the end game? And usually you'll know you're looking at a goal when it's increase, decrease, expand, you know, if it's something that has that kind of action, you know, decrease teen pregnancy, increase, safe handling, what, you know, decrease trauma, you know, whatever the purpose of the grant is. So I'm going to call this an overarching goal. I only do one goal or at the most two, and then I do a bunch of objectives. And I'll show you why I do that in a minute. So here's my overarching goal is, and I'm going to get rid of this, the grants. So it'll just say to increase the capacity and effectiveness of mental health systems serving our Native community. Okay, and you can again put the name of your own tribe in. I just am making this generic. Now, how are you going to do that is the objectives. And the objectives need to be timed, quantified. They need to be very clear. Well, if I were to just say to you, okay, how do you plan to increase the capacity and effectiveness of mental health systems that are serving your community? You would start rattling off a lot of things. Well, how are you going to improve capacity? These are two different things. Remember, capacity is the wherewithal to do something. And that usually involves training and resource development and building programs and infrastructure. Effectiveness has to do with the success rate. So these are really kind of two themes here. You could make them two goals, but I'm going to keep it together. Now, how are you going to do that? There's many roads to Rome. There's many ways you can do that. I'm holding this text here because I know that I saw a couple things here. Oh, it says here, the program has a strong emphasis on cross-system collaboration. So I know right now, cross-system collaboration is going to be one strategy. They're spoon feeding it to you right here. They're literally telling you what they expect. The inclusion of family, youth, and community resources, that's a theme. I'm going to paste that here. I'm just holding these as themes. And cultural approaches. So I know I'm probably going to have 3 distinct objectives minimally that, that deal with these things. I also see that I'm going to need tools and resources. And that's what I'm going to use in my planning and design work. So I'll probably put something about tools and resources. And what I'll do if it's I'll typically go through the whole grant application. In this case, it's called a FOIA, funding opportunity announcement. And I will just start pasting themes. And then I start clustering which ones go together. And I kind of make a, okay, so also coordinated system of care. That seems to be a holistic, evidence-based. I'm gonna take these little words here. Whoops. There we go, right there. All right, now lastly, what I'm gonna do is I'm going to get rid of the rest that I'm not gonna use. Now I'm gonna stop sharing again, and I'm gonna go back to the, oh no, I don't have to, I did something in advance, never mind. What I'm gonna do now is I'd already saved for you some examples of the required activities. So if you go back to this exact grant application that I was just on a minute ago, the FOIA, you will see something called required activities. Here they are right here. And so I say to myself, okay, if these are the required activities, and these might not be all of them, but these are most of them. Whoops, sorry. I know I'm making you seasick here with my scrolling. Okay, oh shoot, here we go. Okay, so these are, even though you see me copying these from my own, and this is the handout I gave you earlier this morning, or that you received. I'm gonna go ahead and paste them down here under my goals and objectives. To mother, where are you? Here we go. Okay. Now, all of these are really objectives. They're calling them, why would you go out if you're required to do these are, I'll just read a couple. If the grant is requiring you, if you get funded, they're requiring you to assure that orientation and ongoing training on system of care is provided to a wide audience as part of workforce development. If they're telling you you have to do a community-based process that's culturally appropriate and engages the community members and stakeholders and spiritual advisors and elders and tribal leaders throughout the grant, these are all the things they're telling you to do. Why would you not make those your objectives? Because it's a limited amount of money. You have a limited amount of time. Why start making make up new objectives? It doesn't make any sense, at least not to me. So what I do is, okay, I now have my project purpose. I have my overarching goal. Now I'm going to have objective 1. I'm just creating some placeholders here. Objective 2 and objective 3. I might need more, but I'm starting there. So I'm going to say, if I want to increase the capacity and effectiveness of mental health systems serving our Native community, then one of my objectives is here it is right here. Here's the objective. I'm going to, instead of assure that orientation, I'm going to say provide or create and provide orientation on ongoing training on systems of care approach for, see, I'm just editing here to make it make sense, for a wide audience, for workforce development. And because it says through the life of the grant and beyond, and I know that objectives are supposed to be quantifiable and timed and everything, I'm going to say by, and I'm going to say 90, I'm just making this up, by 90 days post grant award. I like to do this versus put months and dates in, because then I can use the same text over and over again. It won't have 2018. So by 90 days post grant award, create and provide ongoing training. I'm going to say by 90 days post grant award and throughout the grant award period. So another way I could do this here is instead of saying by 90-day post grant award and throughout the grant award period, I could say beginning, 11/1/2020 through, and then 3 years later, whatever that is, 2023. So you could put actual dates. So this says I'm going to create and I'm going to provide orientation and ongoing training. And I'm going to do that to a wide audience for the purposes of workforce development. Now, there's going to be a lot of activities that go with this. So I'm just going to say activity 1.1 because my objective was objective 1, activity 1.1. Okay, I'll come back to my activities later. So here's my objective. Okay, now let's find another objective. Here's my next little requirement. I'll just do one more. Okay, I already used that one. Use a community-based process that's culturally appropriate and actively engages community members. To me, that kind of goes with they're asking you to provide all this workforce development to a wide audience. So let me come back to that. I might have to think about that for a minute. Let's go back to, okay, so this one has to do, okay, I see what I'm going to do here. Engage various sectors of the community to participate in a systems of care approach through outreach, educational strategies. Now, let me show you that. Let's make that, just for grins, our second objective. And I'm going to say, this might be 90 days, might be 120. It's going to be whatever whatever makes sense. I'm just going to change it to 120. By 120-day post-grant award, engage various sectors of the community. I'm going to say engage our relevant sectors of the community. Oops. Here we go. To participate in the systems of care approach. Okay. Now, when it gets into the weeds about how to do that, that's when you know you're at an activity level. So that's going to be activity 2.1. So conduct outreach. Okay. And conduct outreach. I would, oops, sorry, hold on a minute. Conduct outreach that includes educational strategies I'm not going to go, some of this is, what do you call it? To me, it's too wordy, to sectors such as, I will just say strategies to schools, faith community, housing. I'm just going to get rid of some of these extra words. Justice system. Remember, we don't ever call it the criminal justice system anymore because that's stigmatizing. We call it the justice system. So, and the justice system. It says in addition to healthcare. Well, there's no reason to keep adding more words. So conduct outreach that includes educational strategies to schools, the faith community, housing, the justice system, and healthcare systems. And then I'll say, and other sectors. Okay, so now what you can start to see how I'm using the actual text right from the grant application to create the framework for my goals, my objectives, my activities, and so forth. Now, if I wanted to conduct outreach, first I have to hire the outreach workers, right? So I might even bump this one down. And so you can see that this is a continual process of going back and forth, moving things around till you feel like you have it right. And I sometimes tweak this all the way to the very end. So I'm going to say hire native outreach staff. Okay, if I hire the native outreach staff, do I run out and begin conducting outreach? Well, they're going to need to be trained. So I might say hire and train outreach staff. I might also say, well, what are these educational strategies? They don't exist, right? Because you don't just magically create them. So now we're going to have a new, we'll have a new activity that says create educational material. So create educational strategies. And so, I know we're covering a lot in a short time, and they told me that to do this grant course in 2 hours, and you see we've already done 4 at an hour and a half, and I'm rushing. This is really a couple a day. We were supposed to do this in San Diego face-to-face, but because of COVID, that's why we're doing it this way. But it is abbreviating, and I am making shortcuts, but there was only way we could get this done in the time frame. So let's go back to this objective. By 120-day post-grant award, engage our relevant sectors of the community to participate in the systems of care approach. Okay, how do I do that? We're going to hire and train Native staff. We're going to create, I'm going to say culturally relevant educational activities. I'm going to say maybe, whoops, what am I doing there? There we go. Conduct outreach. So you got the staff hired and trained, you got the educational now, and believe me, you could go into lots of minutia here, but you're not going to have the space in the grant to do that with a page limit. So you just need to give them enough taste so that they understand that it's not just a magical thing that happens, that there's going to be a lot of steps here. Okay. So I'm going to go back up and say, so this objective has to do with engaging the sectors. But up here, this one has to do with creating the systems of care approach. I may end up merging these as I continue to work through this. Let me give you a little different example, and then we'll call it a day on that, and I'll go through the rest because we still have a little bit more to cover. I might even use, maybe we'll do something like this. Well, if you're going to actively engage community members, remember that you first have to identify who they are, right? So that's a step. So we might bump that back up and say, maybe I put that over here. Identify community, I'm gonna call them again relevant, because it's relevant to whatever the grant is. You might have 5,000 community members, but if for the purpose of this, you're only engaging maybe a subset of key players, so relevant community members, key stakeholders, tribal leaders. So in order to get this wide audience, you're gonna have to identify. So anyway, I think you get the gist of it. And so this is how, and this might take in another couple hours of massaging like this, and you'll know it when it makes sense, and you look for themes. And so you might have one on a theme of your objective might be workforce development. Another one might be collaborative practice. Another one might be effective practice. So maybe that's what would make the most sense here is we'll say, I'm gonna, I might delete this later, but this one's gonna be, identify, this is in, identify, this is a note to myself that I may or may not leave in. So first I'm gonna identify the SOC, what do they call them? Key informants or stakeholders. Let's say call them stakeholders because I like to use their language. Then you're going to prepare or build capacity. That's what this is going to be about. So first you identify them, then you call them together and you build capacity. And you do that through training and workforce development. My third objective might be prepare for effective practice, because I remember seeing that word somewhere. And I'll have to work on this a little more. And so again, I'm looking for these logical cascading, identify who you're going to work with in your community that needs to be a part of this effort, build the capacity through training and workforce development. And then actually that means, because I just talked through this, and this is what I'm doing this in real time, just like you would do. I'm going to move this activity down to objective 3 because it has to do with, and this will now be 3.1. This is now going to be having to do with effectiveness. So prepare for and implement effective practice. So really, if I'm conducting outreach strategies and so forth, remember I said there's a word here called tools and resources. And I said, I saved that there because I know it's important to SAMHSA. It appeared in the first few paragraphs. I wanted to find a way to work that in. I think I just found it. So maybe now we're going to be create tools and resources. And I'm going to move on now because we're going to run out of time. But create tools and resources to, to support effective practice. So you can see now, this will go on and on. This will go for probably a few hours. I might even just kind of get rolling like this, and then I might move on to another section. Sometimes I have to be fresh, come back and look at it again. But all of these, you just want to make sure everything makes sense. Does this make sense to identify the stakeholders? Does this make sense to build the capacity? Objective 3 might be, is that the goal there or the theme there is going to be, would just be effective practice. So anyway, that's. So hopefully this is making sense to you. This is just how I do it. Again, you'll see that I literally used everything right from the RFA. I didn't copy and paste it verbatim. I used it to inform and inspire how I approach this. And I do that to make sure I have alignment, that what I'm saying aligns directly with what they're wanting to pay for. This is what they want to fund. Okay, since I don't know how to check the chat box and multitask, you can just unmute yourself and speak up if you have any questions from this point on, because we only have about 15 minutes left. And I want to cover some more examples, other sections of the grant. So we've done the most difficult part now, that whole setting up. And by the way, a lot of the new SAMHSA grants don't even have you do goals and objectives. So you may dodge that bullet all the way around. Now, remember this pesky word. I always say, go back. I never eliminate these prompts until I make sure I've answered everything else. And it says aligned with need right here, aligned with need. So then I would end up going back to my needs section. I would reread that and say, is there something in that need that I want to make sure I cover in my goals and objectives? Well, here's our needs section. Remember, our biggest thing is that we don't have a native workforce. We have a 2-hour drive to go all the way to get services. So we're going to create them locally to avoid the 2-hour drive. So I'm going to make sure, make sure that I cover that. And what I might do just to let the reviewer know I did that is I'm going to tell the reviewer I did that. So I'm going to go back and say here, reviewer note, the goals and objectives below are directly aligned with the needs in section A. You have to make sure that's true, but I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm making sure they know I did my homework. And it actually would be the objectives below, right? Because the goal, yeah, no, they all relate. So anyway, so that's it. So now let's move along. The rest of this is a lot easier. And we're going to go to, I've already covered some of this in our last module, that they have something, this particular grant says required activity implementation. That was one of the, remember the exact question we're answering is describe how you will implement the required activities. This is now I've already done the goals and objectives. So I'm actually gonna use those same required activities. I use them to populate my goals and objectives. I'm using those same required activities because it asks me to describe how I'm gonna do it. So I'll show you how I did it in this grant. There's a couple different ways you can do it. One, see what I did here is I said SAMHSA required activity number 3. I went back to the RFA or the FOIA, whatever you call it. I counted each activity. I labeled it 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it was. And then I answered the question and exactly how I'm going to do activity 3. I don't have time to rewrite all of these because it would take up too much space. And you can see again, I didn't use bullets. This is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to implement clinical training. I'm going to include assessment of suicide. I'm going to use best practice interventions to ensure safety. I'm going to treat suicide as a risk. I'm going to follow up, whatever it is. You can see that I'm answering each one. Here's the required activities. This might be, I think this is required activity 1. I may not repeat it all because of space, but I'm going to now answer this question. How am I going to assure that orientation and training is provided to a wide audience? So I might say, we will develop an orientation program to the systems of care approach. It's also called circles of care. So I'd probably do that, COC. And then aligned with the goals of SOC, we will provide that training, every month at a whatever. So you're just going to literally go down and start telling them how you're going to do it. And this would be RA2. So that's how I answer these things. You guys might do it differently, but, and the grant reviewer can go back and see what was this again, what was or you can put a brief version of it there. Okay, so that's that should take care of that one. And the last part of section C is to provide a chart or graph depicting the time frame. I've already spent a lot of time on this in prior ones, so I'm just showing you, in case any of you are new to this one, that here's a sample. We always alert our tribal elders first and governor and so forth, and that affects buy-in and sustainability. So I've got brownie points here because I added a chart, a column called milestones. This particular grant did not ask for one. It does take up more space to do it that way. You may just leave that out. They'd only ask for activities, target date, and staff. So you may, I was able to work it in and do smaller font in a chart or graph. You can usually go smaller if they allow it. All right. So then staff and organizational experience. Look at this lengthy thing that they want you to do. Describe the experience of your organization with similar projects and or providing services to the population. Identify other organizations you'll partner with. Describe their experience providing services. So again, each one of these could be its own, response, and it needs to be. Otherwise, you end up leaving too much out in your detail. So our proposed project will be managed by tribal organization, Thoreau Community Center, TCC. It was formed in so-and-so after the cluster of suicides. We talk about, all the different chapters. We talk about, the services that we provide include free internet access, We have over 6,000 community members, 1,790 are youth engaged, So I'm describing our experience of this tribal organization. Then remember it says, well, what about your partners? What's their experience? So I start listing, this is from a different grant. This one right here is from Miami, Florida. So this will be a little different, but it's just to show you a different way to display this, to answer this question. Who are your partners? Here's the partners. Here's what they're going to do. Their role. So again, this is different. These are a mix and match of examples, but just so you can see the level of detail that they expect about what your partner's experiences are with and what their role will be going forward. Okay, here is provide a complete list of staff members, including key personnel, project director, and other personnel. Describe the role, their level of effort, and their qualifications, and their experience providing services to this similar population of focus, and their familiarity with their culture and language. That's like 15 things right there that have to be answered. So just remember to make sure you quality assurance yourself and go back and make sure you did every single thing. So our proposed director, Deb Spring, she'll be 100% level of effort or 30% LOE. She's a licensed counselor. She has every time I answered one of those little sub things there, I underlined it so that they see that so I know I answered it and the reviewer knows I did. She has extensive training in trauma-informed CBT, which she culturally modified. She has experience with Hispanic families. She's fluent in English and Spanish. So I answered all of those little nuanced things that they asked for. That was for a Miami proposal. We got that one also. Here's a different type of staff chart: project coordinator, qualifications, and their role. So normally that's why I use a lot of charts, to make sure I cover every nuanced thing and to make sure that I can then do smaller font size. Now, here's a lot of white space here that is a wasted space. So what I would probably do is do this instead, insert a row above it. I would then take all of these, I will merge all of these together. Then I'll just call this the project coordinator. And now I have less white space, because what I'm gonna do, I'll center that. I gotta move you guys out of here, there we go. I'll center it. I'll probably bold it so they can see that I've put something there. And now I'll just merge these two together. And then I'll do the same here. I'll just copy and paste another, or I'll go ahead and insert another row, and I'll make this the outreach worker. And so this will end up doing, the more columns you have, the more space you're gonna waste, because I'll show you another little trick. It's not attractive, but what I make sure is that I answer every single question in such detail that they can't take any points away. So look, one of the other things I'll do here, so let me merge this. Okay, so now what I'll do is make sure, and I'm gonna make this LOE instead of spell it out, because that took less room. There we go. So now I got rid of, so I'm gonna call this staff and LOE. That's right, because I got rid of that. So I think you see what I did here. Whoops, come to mama. I gotta merge these two. And then get rid of this little thing here. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna show you another little trick. All right, so this is the staff. And this column is the qualifications, and this column is their specific role. What I'll do is see how I put my cursor here, and I'm gonna, as I slowly drag my my separator, look, I just picked up 2 lines. I literally just picked up 2. I get so excited when I pick up space of by doing that, by just adjusting this piece right here. Now, another thing I'll do, let's say this was super long and this was super short. Let me see if I can find an example of how to do this. All right, let's see. I'm going to show you this. It's not attractive, but let's say that because this person had a lot more experience, and for whatever reason, or maybe they were a more significant staff member, let's say that I have to have more narrative here, and that it takes up this much space. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my cursor right here in front of my next line, and I'm going to insert a page break. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to bring this way back so I use less room. Okay. Now I'm going to eliminate my page break. And I'm going to eliminate this little, remember I always turn this on, always, because it's just ideal for this exact reason. Now, do you see what I did? I have, these are not pretty anymore. In other words, this is thinner than this, and this is bigger, you know, but all the information is in here. I've got the qualifications are in the first column, the specific roles in another. I don't like to do that. I would probably try to find a better way to abbreviate this so it's not as lengthy, but I just want you to know when you're out of space, there's a lot of different things you can do. Okay, lastly, we do not, this course does not cover evaluation, so I don't have a lot of data collection. But what I want to show you is they're only asking for one thing here. Describe the specific information about how you will collect the required data for this program. That's one thing. So then they ask, and how such data will be utilized to manage, monitor, and enhance. So your narrative will have to talk about how will you manage, how will you monitor, how will you use the data to enhance. And by that, we mean continuous quality improvement, that you'll take the data that you get back and you'll say, is it working? Is it not? Oh my goodness, a lot of people are dropping out early. We must be doing something wrong. Let's do a survey. Let's talk to the clients. Let's see why they're leaving. Let's make an improvement. Let's see what we need to change. So it's kind of a circular thing. But what I want to do is I'm going to change one last time to screen share. And I'm going to show you that almost everything you need for your performance evaluation section, can literally be cut and pasted right out of the RFA itself. You'll have to flush out detail, but let me find, they have something in SAMHSA called performance assessment. There it is, it's on page 41. I want to go to that. There's 41. I'm in the RFA now for circles of care. And here it is. Looky here. Appendix E, right in the RFA, developing the plan for data collection, performance assessment, and quality improvement. In describing your plan for data collection, consider addressing the following points. I would copy these right here. I would go back to the, I've got to do a new share. Well, I'll do that in a minute, but you see what I'm going to do. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to paste it right in under data collection on my writing template, on my grant template. I'm going to see what else they have here that I can beg, borrow, and steal. They even give you a chart. Remember, they asked you, where were you going to get it? Who was going to get it? How are you going to analyze it? They even give you a little chart that you can put your people in. You can copy and paste that chart right in. Here's how to track, analyze, and report. Points to consider. How will you protect so data management, you might say, what do they mean? SAMHSA means by data management, how will it be protected, the data, so that it's confidential? Who will have access to it? How will you store the data? Will it be on locked filing cabinets? Will it be on locked computer screens? Will it be with screensavers so that nobody can sit on your computer if you step away and have access? Who is going to be responsible for tracking and the performance measures? Believe me, in this one, you only get one page to describe your whole evaluation. So by the time you cut and paste all of this in as a framework and try to start briefly answering, your one page is going to be over with. You know, now again, you should have some help. And look, here's your quality improvement answers. Points to consider. You know, how will you do all of these things? How will you make, you know, will you have an advisory board? Maybe you just pick a couple of these things because you're on a space limit constraint. But all the things you need are often right there in the grant application. So lastly, there is a document that I did share with you on the first session, and the link is no longer working. I think that this is going to have to do maybe with an administration change, that some of the documents that come from the current administration will disappear and the new one will have to make their own. I've seen that almost every administration. So I think that's why the link is not working anymore. It was working like a few weeks ago, but I did download it. And so I'm going to do a new share. And I will be happy to make it available to you. I think you might already have it. It's the SAMHSA grant writing. Where is it? It's a SAMHSA grant writing manual. Well, it must be down here. Yeah, there it is. It's, okay, this is what it looks like right here, developing. I gave you the link to this in the module 1, which you have. This document also has guidance for you on all of the sections, every section we've covered. So between what I covered today, between what's in that manual, and between what you can, the data and the information you can mine directly out of the application itself, you should have what you need to put a good dent in this. So we are right at 2:30. I know we covered a lot, and I hate to do this. I like these to be very interactive and for these to go on. I break out into groups. We do practice sessions. You come back with your samples. We review it. And obviously this format does not allow for that. But hopefully we'll be able to face-to-face soon. Sometimes you have to take this class 2-3 times. You learn something new every time if you're a new grant writer. So don't be afraid to sign up for ones we've, because we'll probably do this again soon. So just connect back to Megan and she'll let you know when we're going to do this again. I hope this was helpful. And oh, good. I see some nods. That's always helpful. And I wish you well in your grant writing endeavors, and just keep letting folks know what you need at the ATTC, because we also even sometimes have things we'll review proposals for you. Not usually when there's an active proposal out, but just to see if you're on track with some of your writing skills. So just work with ATTC, let them know what you need, and I wish you well and good luck, and stay healthy.
Pam, we want to thank you so much. I got off my meeting for a second to say these things. Thank you to everyone who joined us. We hope this was helpful. I will be sending you guys an evaluation link, of course, for the training that we're required to pass around. So look for that in your email, and really appreciate the commitment that you guys followed through. And sometimes people don't always get through all of this, so we really appreciate it. And
it's a lot. It's a lot. So, all right. And
Good
please
luck
fill
with
out your
your parents.
GIPRA thing because we need the feedback.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you.